disappear. Yeah. Hello, everybody. That's us. I think we're live and hopefully you can all hear us. My name is Professor Carola Dillenberger. I'm the president of the European Association for Behaviour Analysis, and I welcome you all to the 2025 Summer School for the European Association, EABA. So you're more than welcome. Today is our second talk, and I'm delighted to have Tia here, Dr. Tia Martin. I'll introduce you to her in just a moment, but I have very good news for you all before we start the talk, because I can announce the winners of the B.F. Skinner Award that are awarded by the European Association for Behaviour Analysis every year. There's an experimental award and an applied award. The B.F. Skinner Foundation generously sponsors these awards, so they're very prestigious. And so on behalf of the board, it's a great pleasure to inform you that after a thorough evaluation by the appointed committee, there's a project, two projects have won this year's application, were highly competitive, and both the winning project excelled for their strong theoretical basis. And while the applied project also shone through its solid methodology and relevance to clinical implications, the experimental project impressed through its strong theoretical foundation, innovative design, and potential impact for the field. So the winner of the Experimental Skinner Award is Menos Ntinas. His project is called Experimental Investigation of the Role of Self-Produced Contingency-Specifying Discriminative Stimuli in the Phenomenon of Emergent Learning. So, and the applied Skinner Award was won by Maria Fernandez Shaw. Her project is entitled Verbal Interaction and Instruction Following as a Process of Clinical Change. So I'm delighted for the both of them. They have been told, they have also accepted the award. The award carries €500 per person. They have identified what they're going to spend that money on. And this is obviously work related to their project. We will obviously have more details and pictures and everything else on the EABA website in due course. So I just wanted to make sure that we announce these winners because we're terribly proud. We've had a very, very strong field of applicants. And to be honest, it was a very tight race because they were all brilliant. We could have given them all a prize, but sorry that we can't do that. That's always a problem with competitions. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, talking about it. There will be more information on the projects and on themselves and their bio in due course on the website, and obviously you'll be informed also on the social media. But anyway, today we are welcoming for our second talk for the European Association for Behaviour Analysis Summer School. And the talk is by Dr. Tia Martin. We've known each other for a very long time. We were, as I just said, we were doing a PhD together a long time ago. We've continued our research journey together, which is just great. So Tia is working in positive behavior support, but I think today you're talking more about the behavior safety that was part of your PhD research, but also is obviously permeating your work. So today's talk is behavioral training in critical safety skills. I think this is something very, very important, and I'm really looking forward to it. Tia, I'm going to leave the presentation just visually. I'm going to be around in the background. There is a question button at the right-hand corner at the bottom for any participants who would please put their questions there so that they can be in hierarchy, and at the end of your talk, I'll read them out and I'll come back in again when you're done. We have an hour, so sorry, I've already used up a couple of your minutes, but please, all the participants, don't forget to click the attendance buttons. There's 4 times as an attendance check in red, and you need to click at least 3 of those. So I'm going to leave the presentation, and it's over to you, Tia. So it's great to have you here today.
It's lovely. Let me just do the initial. I'm going to share my screen now that you've announce those awards. Congratulations to the winners. What a big deal. That's really exciting. And it's so lovely to hear about the research that's being done. I am going to talk about a topic very close to my heart. So I am currently, I'm presenting here from Scotland. If my accent is too strong for anyone, I'm really sorry. I'll do my best to speak clearly. I have a couple of colleagues in the audience here, so they can maybe prompt me if I'm mumbling or talking too fast. It's so amazing to see where everyone is logging in from and the diversity, the geographical diversity. That's incredibly cool. So our topic today is teaching critical behavioural safety skills. So my was focused on particularly water-based behavioural safety. And this is a topic that I particularly love because of it's a slightly different application of behaviour analysis, and it is entirely in the wheelhouse of behaviour analysts to target some of the excess mortality that exists for autistic people and people with intellectual disability, and what better way could we be spending our time? So little bit, tiny bit about me first. So I am mum to Jamie and Eva, husband to Matthew, dog mum to the most ridiculous French bulldog called Brie. She is called Brie because she is both French and a little bit smelly. Co-founding director of PBS UK, this fantastic team here that I adore with every inch of my being and who I couldn't be luckier to work with. And yes, I am one of Corolla's very lucky ex-PhD students, and what an experience that was working with Queen's University Belfast. So quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. It's really weird when you're talking to just yourself, so I hope this comes across okay. We're going to cover a little bit about why this is such an important field, specifically in relation to mortality in the autistic and learning disability population. We're going to talk about what behavioural safety actually means, and then we're going to go through some specific examples. I do have a couple of moments where I would like interaction from you guys, if that works. So we're going to start off with a tiny little poll for those of you who can manage. You should see a QR code on the screen. So if you are able to, it would be lovely if you could just click on that QR code. You should hopefully see a little confidence rating that is not super well defined in terms of operational definitions, but will hopefully just give me a sense of how to pitch, what level to pitch my discussion at, what kind of range of experience we have in the group. And we'll go from there. So take a minute and keep saying hi and telling us where you're from. I really enjoy all of that roll through. Okay. Oh, wonderful. People are managing this. Excellent. That's awesome. We have some people who are super confident already. That's okay. I will do my best not to disappoint. Lovely. Okay, I will leave that ticking a little bit in the background, but in general, the majority of people are saying they've heard a little bit about it. You know, they are somewhat confident in relation to behavioural safety. So let's crack on and see how we get. So let's set the scene a little bit in relation to mortality and particularly for the autistic population and people with learning disabilities. So we have a general understanding, lots of different theories about why this is the case, but particularly that some autistic people lack awareness of danger. So may not be absorbing those environmental or social cues that would indicate they are not safe, and therefore prompting a behavioural response that would return them to a situation of safety. So some people, you know, lots of competing theories about, you know, whether that's all autistic people or is more related to autistic people who also have an intellectual disability. You know why that might be the case, whether it's an issue with central coherence, whether it's an issue with sort of different processing neurologically, lots of theories about that. But in general, there is some recognition that at least a larger portion of autistic people than non-autistic people are experiencing issues with safety. Okay, so specifically, So it's always helpful to have a few specific figures, but almost half of autistic children are reported to leave the home unsupported or to wander on occasion. In other words, they are walking out of their front door away from the home without parental supervision, and at least 60% of parents of children with autism choose to avoid outside activities because they are concerned about their ability to keep their children safe, which is really sad, to be honest, because we want individuals, families who have neurodivergent family members, we want them to experience fabulous quality of life, fabulous inclusion, fabulous well-being, regardless of their situation. And if they're feeling like they can't leave the home, then that may well put a damper on that. So particular issues are reported to include lack of water safety, feeling like their children are drawn toward bodies of water but don't have the skills to navigate that safely, road safety, or other basic safety skills. So one technical term, I'm going to try and avoid too many technical terms, but standardized mortality rate is the measure through which we compare excess mortality in a particular group. So an SMR of 1 would suggest that for every expected death in a group, that we see 1 expected death. So that would be a typical or a normal SMR. An SMR of 2 means that we were expecting 1 death, but we saw 2 deaths, and would therefore represent an increased risk of 100% for that group. They kind of generally, so a standardized mortality rate might compare the number of deaths in a given year against previous census data or something like that, to allow us to assess this. So prior to my PhD, some of this research was for my PhD that I did these literature reviews, which is why it's a little bit outdated. I'm sure there are better figures now. But it's really clear that autistic people are at increased risk of drowning. So if you look at the row that is highlighted in green, the number within
the size from drowning was 11, and that mapped against the standardized mortality rate of 3.9. So that meant that there was nearly
we would have expected 1 person to die from drowning, and actually 3.9 people did. A standardized mortality rate of almost 4 times as many deaths as we would have expected. And that's obviously very worrying. So findings were subsequently broken down by age and severity of learning disability, if there was any. And the differences in drowning were with a standardized mortality rate of 5 between the ages of 2.5, but that shot up to 14.1 between the ages of 5 and 10. And I think some of this makes logical sense. Children under the age of 5 are far less likely to be unsupervised in any context than they are than children of 5 to 10 are, and therefore the risk of drowning might be significantly greater for a group of 5 to 10-year-olds than 2 to 5-year-olds. Either way, we're really worrying statistical factors there. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and when it comes to behavioural safety, there is so much that we can do preventatively or proactively to keep the people that we are working with safe from these factors. We should not need to see such horrifying statistics when it comes to mortality. Equally, there's some research in the UK, lots of commissioning around what we call the LEADER report, the learning disability mortality investigations, that really back up those previous statistics. There are far too many deaths from preventable causes for people with intellectual disability who may or may not be autistic. So we're going to go on to discuss this issue in relation to the concept of behavioural safety. And it is one of my favourite topics, so I might start to wax lyrical a little bit, and hopefully that's okay. So ensuring physical, behavioural and emotional safety is a major area of concern for parents and caregivers. So over to you guys. Which of the 7 dimensions of applied behaviour analysis might that particularly relate to, knowing that parents and caregivers are particularly worried about this? That's a mean question, I think. There we go. Yeah. So obviously this is an issue that people think is really important. So we are targeting socially valid behaviours. We are choosing to address socially valid issues, and parents are telling us that they are worried about their children, and we potentially as a group of professionals have a solution to that topic. So that's a great place to start. Moving on from there, What types of safety behaviours could behaviour analysis support with? So again, throw them in the chat. What kinds of safety categories might behaviour analysis offer some solutions for? I've already given you one, so water safety, stranger danger. Road safety, access in the community safety, yeah. Fire safety, Water safety, you're talking my language. Cooking safety, online safety, internet safety is huge. I really am interested in this as an area of safety behaviours. Household safety, social safety, I love it. Yeah, basically the world is your oyster. But those are all really good examples. And we have a really fabulous existing research base, evidence base for behaviour analysis being a useful tool through which to address some of these issues. So we can share the slides, people can see the references, you know, you don't need to, I hope nobody's kind of furiously trying to write this stuff down. But we have good evidence already for behaviour analysis being used for road safety skills. So exactly like you guys are commenting in terms of being able to cross the street safely, being able to navigate pedestrian crossings, being able to navigate just you walking on the pavement or the sidewalk safely. To make emergency telephone calls, so calling 999 in the UK or 911 in the US. Fire safety skills, both in terms of like what to do if one happens and, you know, using extinguisher and all this kind of stuff, evacuation. Home safety skills for latchkey children, if anybody's not familiar with that term, it's young people who are, you know, they're going home after school and maybe their parents aren't present at the point at which they get home. Abduction safety skills, so responding to attempts at lures, responding to potential abuse, safe household behaviours, so that might be around using knives, or it might be around making sure we lock up, or you know, that any vast array of potential behaviours. Safe response to firearms, so unsurprisingly, that's a lot of the research, you know, is really based in the US, and seeking help when lost. It's just the list goes on and on. I found a new paper yesterday, which I thought was brilliant. It used RFT to improve management of allergies, so self-management skills, which was really cool. Teaching poison safety skills, so teaching children how to respond if they find medication around the house and what to do with that. And there's a cool group in the UK, or at least based out of the UK, who are teaching, you know, totally unrelated to autism and learning disability or intellectual disability, and are focused on staff within airports engaging in critical behaviour safety skills. And there's also masses of existing research about staff working in nuclear facilities and space programmes and all of this kind of thing. There's a wee question there about why behaviour instead of behaviour. It's because I'm Scottish. So in the UK, there is a U in behaviour, and my apologies if that is throwing anybody. That is UK English, and just automatically does that when I ping it up here. Okay, so some well-known safety programs that some of you may have heard of. There is a program called Stranger Danger, which is conducted in primary schools or like you know, early years education, which is about teaching children to respond to potential abduction attempts. We tend not to use the language stranger danger so much in the UK anymore because it's got a little bit out of hand with like strangers don't necessarily indicate danger, but looking at stranger safety. Green flag, red flag is about responding to risks of abuse, and the Eddie the Eagle program is a gun safety program that has received astonishing, you know, investment in the US. You know, millions and millions of dollars go into these programs to be rolled out across early years education or, you know, middle school education, with a view to keeping our young people safe. And that is a fantastic aim. However, what is quite worrying is that actually the evidence base behind these programs is not fantastic, particularly when you are focusing on student groups that are either have an intellectual disability or who have other neurodivergence. So some of the criticisms of these programs are that they rely on the assessment of acquired knowledge only. So what can the person tell us verbally or through a little written test or something at the end what it is that they're supposed to do under these circumstances? They don't have a specific program for generalizing to real life scenarios. So there is no fundamental or broken down steps to ensure a transfer of skills from the classroom beyond the classroom. And generally speaking, as I've already mentioned, they're typically focused towards people who are typically developing or those without an intellectual disability, and therefore are not meeting the needs of individuals in special educational schools or additional support educational streams. So to give you some examples, Gatheridge et al., again, this is not a new study now. It felt much newer when I was doing my PhD, which is making me feel really old now. However, very cool study where they compared two programs. So the Eddie the Eagle Gun Safe program, millions in investment, and it centers on 4 particular points. So if we encounter a gun in our environment, in our physical environment, then the child should stop. The child should don't touch the gun. The child should leave the area, and the child should tell an adult. Now, those are 4 reasonably fantastic instructions when it comes to if you encounter a gun in your physical environment, those are 4 good things to do. However, Gatheridge et al. Wanted to figure out, does this Eddie the Eagle Gun program actually result in children doing that, or does it just result in children saying that? And so they compared the standard Eddie the Eagle Gun Safe program with an adapted behavioural skills training program that they created. So the behavioural skills training program was founded, totally along the lines of behavioural skills training as we understand it. So that has several distinct components. First up, you have your instruction. So we have, what are we asking the person to do? Modelling is, have we shown them how to do it? Practice is, have they had opportunities to do it under supervision? Reinforcement of correct responding. So have we given them feedback, which is encouraging correct responding? And then lastly, have we given them the opportunity to engage in those behaviours in real life settings? There is a model in the UK that is put forward by a very nice man called Roy DeVoe out of the Tizard Centre at Cambridge, Canterbury, forgive me, in the UK. And he has developed a model called the EDDY model, EDDY, which is focused on social care settings and implementing behavioural skills training in social care settings. So if anybody's interested in that model, they should go and look him up. But Gatheridge et al., so they adapted the Eddie the Eagle Gun program model. They added extra elements to ensure all of the criteria for a behavior analytic behavioral skills training program. And then they had 2 separate groups, one with the original program and one with the BST program. So the group that received the regular program plus BST were significantly more likely to demonstrate the desired safety behaviour, and the group that received the Eddie the Eagle program alone demonstrated verbal responses only. Now, what that means is that they created what we call proxy settings, proxy opportunities for these young people to demonstrate the skill whilst ensuring their safety. So under this particular context, they had like a plaster cast gun created, so looks really lifelike. If you are a 7-year-old, is going to be quite convincing, but does not actually pose any physical threat to anyone in the environment. The teachers and the additional educational staff were all in the loop. Everybody knew what was happening. They created a situation whereby the young people discovered the fake gun, and then they observed to see what the children would do under that circumstance. Now, what we were hoping that they would do, based on the Eddie the Eagle Gun program, would be stop, not touch it, don't touch it, move away, go and tell an adult. With the Eddie the Eagle Gun program alone, what actually happened was that the children saw the gun and went, ooh, gun, that's interesting. They could tell you what they were supposed to do, but they didn't actually do it in real life settings. And that is the aspect that is missing in ensuring absolutely our young people's safety. However, the group that received the regular programme plus behavioural skills training, because they had had that opportunity to practice that skill in as close to real life settings as we could actually get, they were much more likely to stop. I know what I'm supposed to do here. I've encountered this situation before. Don't touch it. Go and get an adult, which is really fabulous. Suggests really great outcomes. Similar outcomes have been found for other really well-funded behavioural, non-behavioural safety programs. So a comparison of the red flag, green flag program using a Confederate, again, red flag, green flag as it stands. So informational content, teaching young people about risk of abuse and strangers and potential lures. Or the red flag, green flag program plus the additional instruction, whereby we practice these skills in as close to real life settings as we can get. And under this particular example, they utilized what was called a Confederate. So someone who is there as an actor and who attempts to lure the children away from their safe adult using a variety of methods, and the children then thereby have that opportunity to demonstrate a refusal to go with a stranger. However, they were never actually at any risk. We were always entirely in control of the situation. So again, these particular findings did not support the original programme in terms of the amount of investment that it's getting. It isn't achieving the results that we actually need to be confident that we can keep our young people safe. That's really depressing when you think about how much funding goes into this stuff. Of course, these groups do not want to hear that their programs are not likely to achieve the kinds of outcomes that they are intended to do so. I think there is a degree to which, if you're talking about children who do not have an additional intellectual disability or some form of neurodivergence, then possibly we might have more confidence that the skills were generalized without additional specific help. However, with groups who do have these additional factors, we know that many of them are going to need additional supports in order to be truly safe. Okay, so how can we do behavioral safety better? So first up, we need to recognize that there are different levels of competence. We have verbal competence, which means a person can tell me what they are supposed to do under the circumstances. So if we think about learning to drive, this is our theory test. So I am able to say what I should do under a given circumstance. I am able to tell you that in the UK, on a motorway, the driving speed limit is 70 miles an hour. Okay, and that I should tell you that I should drive. I should not exceed that limit of 70 miles an hour. Observed or role play competence is when I have the opportunity to demonstrate that skill, but under supervision. So it's not truly real life settings in the sense that I'm not operating without potential observer reactivity. However, it is the next step on. So that might be, I'm in the car, but my driving instructor is there. And I'm on the motorway and he is there to, present with me, and I am able to demonstrate that I know that 70 miles an hour is the speed limit, but also that I am going to drive at no greater than 70 miles an hour on the motorway. Practical in real life settings is when I'm driving on my own and there is no person there who might create an observer reactivity. And can I still adhere to that safety behavior without the supervision in place? So real life settings. So the first step is to recognize that there are these clear and distinct groups of competence when it comes to safety skills. Second up, it is to recognize that behavioral skills training, going beyond just verbal competence, will need to include the following factors. We still have to have instruction. We still need to be clear about what it is that we're asking them to do, and they should be able to tell us what it is they are supposed to do under the circumstances. We retain the modeling aspect. So I'm not just going to tell you what I want you to do. I'm going to show you what I want you to do. And then you're going to have the opportunity to practice under supervision. So that is your rehearsal and feedback. Then we have the final addition, which is in situ training or proxy settings. And this is when we create either genuine real life opportunities for the person to practice the skill or derived real life settings for the person to practice the skill. In the context of my PhD, one of the key defining behaviours for water safety was that you have the skill, if you should find yourself in a body of water unexpectedly, that you have the skill to submerge, i.e. I've gone under the water, and recover safely. So recover is coming back up from the water and then going to the side. It would have been entirely unethical for me to just push the person into the pool or shove them underwater in the hopes that I might be able to then check if the child has a submerge and recover skill. So the closest we're ever going to get is a proxy setting, whereby I can ask them to jump into the water. And if they are able to do that safely under a variety of circumstances, then we can imply that the skill exists. So there are definite difficulties there. And I have just skipped a slide, so sorry about that. This would have been a helpful slide here. So for proxy settings, if we cannot truly expose a person to the situation whilst ensuring their safety, then proxy settings is the best we're going to get. But we can be really innovative and creative with designing those and making sure that we give the person, the young people that we're working with, the greatest opportunity possible to encounter difficulties while remaining safe. All right, I'm on track. We're doing okay. I'm going to keep going. If Carola needs to interrupt me at any point, then she'll do so, but I'll keep going until I'm interrupted. Okay, so when it comes to safety behaviours, a little bit more engagement for you guys here. We have two categories. We have preventative behaviours, those that we do before we're actually at risk of any harm to ensure that we don't contact a potentially harmful situation. And then we have reactionary behaviours, which is I'm now in a potentially harmful situation and I need to take action in order to make myself safe. So if there is anyone else in the group who is working within a kind of positive behavioural support framework, then these will be really similar terms to our kind of proactive, reactive terminology. So lots of similarity there. I am going to ask you guys to help me. So let's talk about stranger safety. So responding to potential strangers. What might be some preventative skills, things that a young person or an adult who potentially has some additional support needs, what skills might they need to do to ensure that they do not encounter unsafe interactions with strangers? I might need to give you some exemplars. Stay with an adult. Amazing. Great. Stay with an adult. If I am a young person, I should stay with my caregivers as much as possible to ensure my safety. What else? I've baffled you all. Okay, stay with an adult. Thank you, Scott. That was the very first one. Recognizing or discriminating between known caregivers. So who are the people that I am allowed to leave the house with? Who feels safe? Can I identify who is a known person or not a known person? This is a tricky, there's a lot of variables there. There's a lot of nuance. So that might be a hard thing to teach. But for young people who maybe have additional support needs, we might have a list of people whom we're really clear that these are safe individuals and I am allowed to engage in activities or leave the school or be picked up from school or something. I love the ability to say no. Yes, absolutely. Everyone should be able to say no. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Recognizing emergency services personnel. These are all preventative. Absolutely. Okay, so someone has suggested what to do when approached by a stranger. So technically, that is a reactionary behavior. So if a stranger has already approached you, I now need to take action to keep myself safe. So how do I respond to potential lures? What should I do if somebody has asked me to come and help them find my dog? Contacting appropriate adult to feedback. This person asked me you to get in their car, something of that nature. Good. All right. So we're getting into the swing of it now. Good. Wow. Loads of great. I need to get a list of these comments actually, because there are so many really good ones that I should add to this. Do I get a list of the comments? Someone will tell me maybe. Okay. Next category, road safety. So thinking preventative again, what are the things that people need to know before they're in danger? What are the skills that we can demonstrate that prevent danger recurring? Walking on pavements. Good, exactly. Sticking to the pavements. Recognizing road signs. Superb. Trusted and known adults again. Yeah. Possibly a slightly delayed comment from the last one, but always a good skill. Yeah. Instruction stuff. Miss Lyon, you're jumping ahead in my presentation. Good. Yeah. like wearing colours that mean you're more likely to be identified, recognising colours for traffic lights, totally brilliant examples. Okay, so preventative, and this is not an exhaustive list, and it definitely isn't now because you guys come up with so many examples, but using pavements, using pedestrian crossings of all kinds. This is a challenge. I don't know about in other countries, but in the UK, I think we have 3 different kinds of pedestrian crossings and they all operate differently. The rules are different for all of them. So that likes to keep, we like to keep people on their toes over here. Navigating pavement traffic. So when you end up with cyclists on the pavement, or you end up with, mopeds or whatever on the bike lanes, all these different factors, totally. Great examples. Route planning. Maybe I need to figure out what the safest route is to get to my destination. Reactionary for road safety, reacting to traffic that violates pedestrian crossings. So I have waited for the green man in the UK. I don't know if it's a green man elsewhere. The green man in the UK means it's our turn if you're a pedestrian. And if, sometimes the green man is there, but the car is not following the rules. So the car is coming despite the green man. What do I do then? How do I respond to that? You're not really safe unless you are able to navigate all the potential things that might go wrong. And troubleshooting in the absence of crossings. There's no pedestrian crossing, but I still need to get onto the other side. How do I do that? What do I do? Fire safety. We've got 2 more groups and then we'll preventative fire safety. What are some skills that I might need to make myself safe and avoid potential fires? Okay, so recognizing the sound of a fire alarm is a useful skill. Might be reactive, then what to do about it. Oh good. Turning off it, great example, fabulous, Gabriella. So using kitchen appliances, safe use of kitchen equipment, making sure we turn things off. For those of us who have hair or straighteners or whatever, making sure that we unplug those from the walls, unplugging phone chargers, making sure that we blow out candles, safe practices around matches, lighters, cigarettes, candles, and maintenance of smoke detectors might all be preventative skills that people need to ensure that they are proactively safe in the event of a fire. And then reactionary behaviours, I've done it now, include some of the obvious. So fire evacuation procedures, calling the emergency services, using fire extinguishing devices. Great, which is hard because there are lots of different kinds. This is really, not necessarily a simple task. Huge volumes of skills that might be required. And then last up is water safety. So in terms of preventative skills for water safety, we have things like entering and exiting water areas safely. So that's things like not running when you're next to a pool, or being careful when you're next to a large body of water. Staying with an adult again might be an important one. Having the ability to propel through water, engaging in or the absence of socially unsafe behaviours, or engaging in socially safe behaviours, such as not to go in the microwave. That's a great example. Non-flammable versus fab. Brilliant examples. Whereas reactionary includes our submersion and recovery, or use of emergency flotation devices. And it is absolutely true that these are massive skill areas, huge volumes of skills required to be able to consider a person truly safe. And actually, when we were doing this as part of my doctoral research, we ended up with more than 70 necessary behaviours across 4 different response classes before we considered that a young person or an adult might be deemed to be considered safe in the event of falling into a body of water. So it was massive. We had 4 categories. We had task analysis for all of them. This huge, massive volume of work that would need to be done before we could hand on heart say, I think that they know what they need to know to keep themselves safe. So no small undertaking. So if we can't teach them all, and we don't have time maybe to teach all 73 skills that are in Tia's swim safety program, then what are some generally good protective skills that we might be able to focus on if we can't teach everything? We should teach everything because safety is non-negotiable, but that's ideological, and sometimes funding just doesn't work that way. So it may be necessary to focus on some generally good protective skills. So how to teach stop, I think it was my very own Katie who highlighted that one earlier. Having the ability to stop in your tracks when a person is, asks you to, that is the difference between walking in front of a bus and not walking in front of a bus. It is the difference between getting electrocuted and not getting electrocuted. It is absolutely a pivotal foundational skill in terms of safety. And it's not necessarily even that hard to teach. So I've outlined the steps this is Steve Ward. I'm sure that some of you have either read his research or are familiar with his programs. He has a game that he teaches that's included in this book. And I think it's called Red Light, Green Light in this book, which works perfectly in terms of teaching a young person or someone with an intellectual disability how to stop. And it has a number of different steps, which I will outline just for illustration. This is where I've gotten into silly GIFs. So I was going slightly mad at this point, I think, trying to put together some interesting slides. So step one, find a motivator. For a lot of young people, safety is not inherently motivating. The idea that they might be a safer person at the end of this session is not going to be enough to create the motivation necessary to work with you on this task. So as much as I love the idea of intrinsic motivation, it may be necessary, particularly in the early stages, to add some extrinsic motivation for the purposes of this task. Step two, find someone to help you. A supportive partner can help with prompting to ensure errorless learning. And really there is errorless learning is absolutely the way to go when it comes to safety skills. We do not want the young people we are working with or the adults we are working with encountering unsafe situations because errors have been made in teaching. So having a supportive partner or a confederate would be the safety language under these circumstances is really incredibly useful. Step three, move away from your target person. So your confederate or your support person is going to help prompt the young person to stay where they are. And I am going to back off. Steve suggests about 15 to 20 feet is sufficient. And like I said, that support person is going to be there to prompt if required. Step four, prompt, wait, go, and then stop. So if you grew up in the UK, this sounds a lot like What's the Time, Mr. Wolf, a game that we would play in the playground, which is effectively exactly this very similar setup and could be done in exactly the same way. We just change the instructional words. So using your hand as a signal, wait. So the person, wait, go, then stop. So the addition of a visual prompt is a great option under these circumstances. We're going to want to give them the best chance possible of reacting quickly. So latency is a very key part of this process. If somebody is not able to stop with little to no latency, then we can't be totally confident in their safety. So the less latency, the better. Step five is practice, practice, practice. So signal, stop, reinforcement. Everyone will be. We want to promote
little latency as possible.
Once we're getting good at it, and the game should be fun, so we want to create a lot of fun opportunities here. We want the person to be interested in taking part. You want to practice across different people in different settings. Again, reinforcement should be available as quickly as possible. So reinforcement latency as well as behavioural latency, like of the stop. And then once we've gotten really good at it, you must practice with distractions. It is a very different skill to be able to stop in the back garden with me when it's just you and me, to being able to stop when actually there's something really, really interesting across the street that I'm going to want to access, maybe more so than I'm going to want to pay attention to you. So you cannot really be confident that a person has obtained the skill unless they're able to do it without significant environmental distractions. Other great skills that might be helpful to teach include saying no and consent. I really care about this one. A person should have the ability to say no. And if they do not have that ability, then they are not safe. Asking for help. So if a person doesn't know where they are, doesn't know, they've lost their mum, or they're lost their phone, or how should I go about asking for help? How do I identify an appropriate adult? What do I say? Understanding the concepts between private versus public is a great protective skill. Being able to state my name, my address, and the phone number of a trusted person. All really great general, would it ever be a bad idea to be able to do this? I'm sure that list could be much, 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 much longer if we spent a bit of time together thinking about what we want to add to it. But there's some ideas for anybody that might want some ideas. So in summing up, okay, some take-home points. Safety is fundamentally a behavioural issue. The ability to be safe or otherwise is totally in the wheelhouse of behaviour analysts, or those of us who are using behaviour analytic tools in our teaching. Many standardized safety programs just don't work for the groups that we focus on. They are not sufficient for groups with any additional support needs, or potentially for many neurodivergent groups. Verbal competency is absolutely not enough. We know and we absolutely understand that the ability to say what you should do does not equate to the person doing it under real life settings, and therefore we should not be accepting it as mastery of a skill. And finally, proxy settings plus practice plus reinforcement is what's going to get you results. And I absolutely encourage you all to think about how you can make the young people or the adults that you work with safer on a day-to-day basis in your own practice. And that is me. So I have a second little poll for those of you that managed it. And I'm not going to do anything. It's just curiosity for me. So if you would like to do so, then you can tell me if you feel any degree more confident now on the topic of behavioural safety than you did before. And otherwise, I've summed up and we can maybe do some questions if Carola is still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to give everybody a quick moment to give you a response to how confident they are. But Tia, thank you so much. I think that was really interesting, and it was a whistle tour through behavioural safety. Obviously, there is so much more to to learn, but I think it's given the great dangers, especially around elopement as well for kids with neurodivergence and autism in particular. They tend to be exposing themselves to such great dangers that anything at all is better than nothing in terms of safety skills. And as you say, safety is not negotiable. So the more safety skills can be taught, the better. We have got a couple of questions here. And in the area, the first one is here, Scott Graham is asking, in the area of behavioural safety, is there any research using video modelling with individuals with intellectual disabilities?
There is. So I remember, and it's not even new because I remember doing it for looking at it when we were working together. So there was a study about using video modelling in relation to like home safety behaviours. So it was things like safe knives and things like that. I wouldn't be able to give you the references off the top of my head. But I also think that there would be some really interesting, and somebody's probably done it, but video modelling in relation to like online safety, I think would be a really like a natural extension, because if you're already online looking at YouTube videos and things and you have video modelling opportunities, like I think that might be a nice application there, and my guess is that somebody is looking at that. But if not, then maybe Scott should.
Yeah, I'm just thinking whenever you were talking about that, I remember another PhD student many years earlier was doing some safety in the home. This was a student who was working with behavioural skills training for very young mothers of babies. Some of those mothers had, they didn't have learning disability diagnosed as such, but they hadn't great achievements in the intellectual area, and they were living in a place where they had their own little flat with their newborn babies. And one of the safety skills she taught them was to make their flat safe for their baby as the baby became a toddler, removing knives and so forth and so forth. So I think it's an interesting aspect of safety as well for the parents to learn to make the environment safe for the young children. I mean, if you have 2 or 3 year olds, it's going to be difficult to teach them the kinds of things you were talking about, albeit when they're a wee bit older, it's important. But I think it's an interesting point to make that, parents need to be learning about safety skills as well.
Yeah, so caregiver skills and not just the skills for the individuals themselves. That's interesting, and I think keeping a toddler safe is no easy task. So
especially many people, when the second toddler arrives or when the second baby arrives, and you have the first, the old one is a toddler and so forth. So yeah, we've also got Carmen is asking the red flag, green flag program. Do we need to buy anything to use it, or is it just free to use?
I think it's paid, but it's not the BST version. The red flag, green flag is the non-behavioural version that is rolled out, particularly in the US. So I am sure that it's possible to access it if you wanted to add your own BST elements to it. But if you were going to use it, I would encourage you to extend the real life settings and instruction and feedback component to make sure you could be truly confident that it was successful.
Yeah. Carrie is wondering if the slide deck will be shared. And I mean, we usually just share the video presentation. So the presentation is being recorded. So anybody who was registered and was not able to attend or wants to review it can review it over Behavioural Live. But we also will download the video presentation in the next few days. It usually takes a day or two to get the editing done. And we will post it on our brand new European Association for Behaviour Analysis YouTube channel, and we'll share that link widely so that your presentation will be available. So anybody wants to look at the slides, they can just stop and the video recording. So there's no need to have the slide deck itself shared, I don't think.
If you particularly want a PDF, then my email is there, and by all means ask me for one.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very generous of you. By the way, on the chat, there's loads of great appreciation for your presentation coming in. Thinking that, but here's Petra had one more question. What is your view on school staff requesting parents or caregivers to accompany individuals with autism on school trips for safety reasons?
What is my view on that? That is a deep question. I think that I can see why they do it, because if you don't feel confident you can maintain a person's safety, then I think the next step is saying they can't go on the school trips, and that would be really sad. I think it's an additional ask of parents who are already overstretched, and that makes me really sad that they would have to be in a position where schools didn't feel they could manage that safely without additional parent support. So I guess it would depend on the context for me, and if it was a case of we really can't do this ourselves but we want your child to be included, then I think I would empathize with the school's difficulty, but I would also feel sad that they maybe didn't have the ability to do that themselves.
And I mean, many parents have other children as well. So if they have younger siblings, that means then childcare and expense and all sorts of issues as well. Which, yeah. But I see your point about, if you then say, well, I can't, then do they then not take your autistic child to the school trip, which actually happens quite a lot. Kids are sort of like accidentally not being brought. Yeah, it happens a lot. But Tia, we're more or less out of time. I think we're also out of questions. So thanks so much for answering all the questions. And thank you very much for your time and your presentation. It was just wonderful. I think really the issue is so important given all the things that are happening to these kids. So as you say, you should be able to see those comments if you just stay there and enjoy them for a little while. I'm gonna close the presentation. I think hopefully everybody has got. I think, have you sent me in the questions for the CEUs?
I will do it right now.
Yeah, so that'll be great, because that means then if anybody for some reason didn't get the attendance check, there will be 3 questions, and you get your free CEUs by just answering those questions. And those questions will be asking for information that was sort of scattered at the beginning, middle, and end of the presentation, so that that to show that you've actually viewed it. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you very soon. And I'll leave everybody. Thanks everybody for turning up. Again, we've had a fantastic, I think at one point we had well over 200 people online at the same time. But well over 833, I think, registrations. So that's quite mind-boggling. These people can all see the presentation later on. And for those who did not register in time, we'll have it on a YouTube channel in the next, let's say, week or so. Shouldn't be much of a problem. Thanks, Caleb, for being our backup in the background and looking after us, making sure that all the technology was all working. And okay, thanks. Thank you very much. Thanks. See you later. Bye.